Oh, baby, do we have a lot to discuss. All things NFL, including your first place, Houston Texans. Every team in the AFC South lost except the team that everyone thought was going to be the worst in the NFL. Go figure, Texans are in first. They beat the Jaguars. We will be all over it throughout the course of our show, talk about everything going on in week 1 in the NFL, get to the Astros and so much more. But guys, what a clinic by the Houston Texans. And I did not think we'd be saying that. I picked them to win. I felt confident they would win because everyone loved Jacksonville. And, well, rookie quarterbacks picked first overall. They don't win their first start. Last time it happened, David Carr back in 2002. But the way the Texans won, I mean, one team was really well coached. The other team was the Jacksonville Jaguars.
If you had sat David Culley, Tim Kelly, Lovie Smith, Nick Caserio, and a lot of the coaches and decision makers with the Houston Texans down, and you said, script sort of one of the perfect scenarios. Script us out like a way that you would want to win this football game and how you think this might go if you're going to win. I think it looks a lot like yesterday. I think that the way Tyrod Taylor played with some improvisation, but also playing within what Tim Kelly called, running the football a ton. Trevor Lawrence makes some mistakes. And look, there's some lucky breaks that the Texans got over the course of this game that certainly helped them out in the course of them defeating the Jacksonville Jaguars. But if you could just say, like, hey, in a most likely scenario, how you win this football game, what does it look like? I think it looks a lot like yesterday from what the Texans wanted to do, what we thought they were going to do, what they hoped they were going to be able to do. I think it looks a lot like yesterday.
Yeah, it was a dominant performance. They outplayed Jacksonville. They outcoached Jacksonville. They outclassed Jacksonville. They out-everythinged Jacksonville. And not only, guys, did the Texans win, not only did the other three teams in the AFC South lose, but after 1 week of NFL football, the Texans also have the best point differential in the AFC.
Wow.
So if the season ended today, not only would the Texans be AFC South champs, they'd be the number 1 seed in the AFC, just like we all expected, right?
How about that?
How about that?
And
How about
also,
that?
well, look ahead to next week, right? I mean, they're playing a really good Browns team.
Stop the count. Stop the count.
But what I'm saying
No
is,
more.
even if they lose next week, they're still tied for first place. So how about that? Your Texans are in first place for a guaranteed now 2 weeks at the minimum.
What out of the game was the most surprising element to you? Because for me, this game, the way the NFL is played right now, is so much about the quarterback spot. It is so much about how good is your quarterback, what can he do, does he make mistakes, can he improvise? Now, I think, BK, your phrasing that you used on Friday about how there's a lot of Saturday on Sunday, it's what kind of mobility does your quarterback have? Look, there's still Tom Brady who doesn't have to run, doesn't have to, just has to move around in the pocket. But a lot of the guys you see that are successful on Sundays have some movement to them. So to me, I was surprised there was so much off-script success from Tyrod Taylor. That's what really jumped out to me because we'd seen in training camp, they didn't use a ton of, hey, let's move Tyrod Taylor around. Certainly the way training camp works and even the preseason games that we saw Tyrod Taylor in, it's not like he was like shaking off Texans defenders, rolling out and trying to throw a bomb. Like he really didn't do that. So to have that much off-script success and athletic success where he got out of trouble, they put himself in a little trouble sometimes, but usually he got out of trouble. I thought that was maybe the most surprising thing because I don't know that I thought Tyrod Taylor had that in him.
Yeah, that's a great point by you, Cody. And I also just think that the game plan overall by the Texans was exceptional. Tim Kelly's game plan, he showed me a lot. Look, this is a guy that had to get out of Bill O'Brien's shadow. The way he deployed the different running backs, right? The Texan strength has to be, can they run the ball and get their different backs involved to do different things? Mm-hmm. Well, all three of the main running backs on this team scored touchdowns. And just the way, Tim Kelly had different zone running blocks and just the way they used play action and the way they did take their chances downfield when Tyrod felt like it was there. I just thought it was a really well put together game plan. And, the Texans show that if they take care of the ball, right? If they take care of the ball and they don't lose games, they'll be in a lot of games because this defense was able to continue to force turnovers. So you give credit to Lovie Smith, the DC, and I was blown away. I thought the Tim Kelly game plan for Tyrod Taylor in this offense, I thought, Cody, as you said it best, if you could script the way they want to play, that was the way they play.
Yeah, the game plan was great, and the execution was even better. I think the biggest storyline from yesterday was the play of Tyrod Taylor. Anybody telling you that they expected that from Tyrod Taylor is lying.
That was related to him.
That wasn't bus driver Tyrod Taylor. That wasn't game manager Tyrod Taylor. I think we all expected that. Like, we know who Tyrod Taylor is at this point in his career. Yesterday was one of the best games of his NFL career. Tied for third in terms of single-game passing yards in Tyrod Taylor's entire career. And, oh, by the way, he wasn't throwing the ball hardly at all in the second half. Guys, he had 229 yards and 2 passing touchdowns at halftime. I honestly thought at some point in the game they were going to go like an old Scooby-Doo villain. Someone was going to pull the mask off of Tyrod Taylor, and it was going to be Deshaun Watson. I'm sorry for bringing up Deshaun 6 minutes into the show because we're all trying to move on, and we're all excited about what post-Deshaun Texans look like. But he looked like number 4 yesterday. That was one of the best performances I have ever seen from Tyrod Taylor. He was better than expected, and that should excite you.
Look, there's not a huge pantheon of fantastic Texans quarterback performances. Deshaun Watson has most of them. Matt Schaub has a couple to his credit. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw, I think, 5 touchdowns against the Titans one time. But Tyrod Taylor, as far as a debut, as far as what he had to work with, it's one of the most impressive performances from a quarterback in Texans history. Now, did he do it against what we saw was like an amazing team? No, and there's certainly that caveat. Like, is he going to do that to the Cleveland Browns? Well, if he does, then he might be on the track for comeback player of the year or most improved or some sort of award or something. So, like, we can worry about Cleveland, and like David Culley said, like, I'm going to enjoy this, and then I'll get to Cleveland. We can worry about all that later on in the week, but not only was it physically what Tyrod did, it was an elite version of that management of the game. When you hear Mark Ingram and Brandon Cooks and guys like that talk about, oh, he's getting us in the right play. And that was something David Culley gave Tyrod Taylor a lot of credit for. Well, he checked us at the line. And look, the rushing performance overall was not super impressive. Like, I get that they had some good moments, but in short yardage situations, they had some issues. They didn't run the ball well in the red zone, with the exception of Phillip Lindsay on that trick play on the direct snap to Ingram. But for Taylor Taylor basically called the Pharaoh Brown 25-yard, one-handed reception. He's like, hey, we got the look we wanted. We had 3 different plays. I picked that one, and boom, I dumped it over to Pharaoh. He made the play. Like, that was a picture-perfect performance from Tyrod Taylor in every level. His athleticism, his between the ears, all those things from Tyrod Taylor was very nice yesterday.
And I'm just happy for the players in that locker room, and really for this coaching staff, specifically David Culley, right? What did we hear about David Culley? Oh, he's just a puppet. The team's going to be awful. He's not really doing anything. Well, sometimes good people matter. And David Culley's a good person, a likable dude, and his team yesterday played hard for him. David Culley's coaching staff and game plan was better than anything Urban Meyer and his staff drew up. Like, sometimes that matters. And, like, listen to David Culley in the locker room afterwards. Like, players feed off this stuff. Players could feed off that narrative that everyone thinks we're bad. But when your leader believes in you, when he's the same guy every day, I really think that matters. And take a listen to Culley afterwards here.
Let me tell you something. Great job. Hey, this is what off-season training camp, this week of practice, which was a wonderful week of practice, a great week of practice, man, and I appreciate this coaching staff right here. What a great job of getting you all prepared now. I mean, a great job. And you guys went out and did what we asked you to do. Now, do we have a bunch of things to clean up? We sure do, and we're going to clean it up. But, man, isn't it nice to clean it up after a win?
I love the players giving the typical like classroom answer, like when the teacher asks the question and everybody sort of knows the answer and everyone's like, yeah. I love that. Look, I think your point about Culley is David Culley, through one game and one preseason, has operated like Bill O'Brien thinks he operates. He operated with a tight team that didn't make a ton of mistakes. Now, they had their mistakes. Malik Collins with a couple roughing the passers that extended some drives that led to points.
Real quick, though, but isn't it great that Culley goes and talks to him right away? Like Bill O'Brien would have just sent the guy to the doghouse. Like, David Culley's coaching that guy up. Like, that's a noticeable difference between the past regime to this current regime.
What David Culley and his coaching staff executed is what Bill O'Brien thinks he was executing the past few years in Houston.
Yeah, I like that comparison. And look, David Culley has redeeming qualities. I don't know how many redeeming qualities Bill O'Brien had as a person. Like, David Culley is so easy to root for. You want him to be successful. And I don't know if you had that with Bill O'Brien, especially towards the end of BOB's run here in Houston. The Texans players played angry yesterday. Like, they played like they had something to prove. And I think the coaching staff coached like they had something to prove, too. Like, they acted like they were mad that they were underdogs against a team that went 1-15 last year with a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback. Like, the Texans took that as a slap in the face. And they responded. And the Texans are one of the oldest teams in the NFL. The Jags are one of the youngest teams. The Texans just looked more prepared. They went about their business better, and they were just dominant from start to finish. And I couldn't tell you guys the last time the Texans looked that good for all 4 quarters in a game. Like, it just felt like so often during the Bill O'Brien era, they would just play up or down to their competition. And sometimes they would get big leads, but, like, you never felt safe with the big lead because they would do something and let the other team back in it. You never felt like Jacksonville had a chance in this football game yesterday. That was a complete and dominant performance for all 4 quarters. I don't know the last time we've seen something like that from this team.
BK, I think the perfect example of what you're talking about is when they get the ball back with like 40 seconds left in the first half, and they had all 3 timeouts. And I saw that, and I was like, they have to put 3 points on the board. They have to put 3 points on the board. And they were not at, I mean, they started at their own 31. And I was like, this is absolutely a scenario where they put 3 points on the board. And to take it a step further, kind of like what you said, Tyrod Taylor was like, we're not going to get 3. We're going to get 6. And he just chunks it up to Brandon Cooks and makes it happen. And then next thing you know, Danny Amendola's walking in the end zone. This guy wasn't even in the NFL
he
a week ago.
20 minutes ago.
Yeah, wasn't even in the NFL a week ago. And Tyrod Taylor's hitting him for a touchdown. You're like, okay, this is a little bit different because in the past, the Texans would not have utilized those 3 timeouts, would not have, gotten into the end zone, certainly got into scoring position, and it feels like they absolutely would have been kicking or at the very least not putting any points on the board. But to put 7 on right before halftime, and really, I thought at that point the Jaguars' dauber was way down. Like they were hanging hats. They were not feeling good going into halftime, and then you saw it coming out 3 and out right out of halftime from Lovie Smith's crew. That's another thing that you don't often see from the Texans. So you saw a lot that you haven't seen over the past couple of years that you see on other NFL teams that now you see with the Texans.
Yeah, that touchdown in the final few seconds of the first half made it 27-7, and it really felt like the game was over right then. But I'm glad you brought that up, Cody, because I wrote that down in my notes watching this game yesterday. The most impressive part of that final drive of the first half for me was the coaching, more specifically the fact that the Texans had all 3 timeouts. They didn't have to waste a timeout earlier in the half for somebody being unprepared, for a play not being sent in time, for somebody being in the wrong spot, for only having 10 guys on the field. Just some self-inflicted wounds that have been plaguing this franchise for years. We didn't have those yesterday. And that was the best part of that final drive. They had all 3 timeouts because they were so buttoned up from the opening kick yesterday, miles ahead of Jacksonville, but also miles ahead of where they were last year.
Can I add another element to what you just point together?
Go ahead.
David Culley was right in the official's ear as soon as Brandon Cooks was down. Brandon Cooks was tackled with 13 seconds left or whatever it was, and the timeout was in immediately. There wasn't 4, 5, 6 seconds that dripped off. David Culley, he was on the official. You heard him once over the official's microphone. He was on the officials the entire time about this and about that, and the officials tried to get the ball rolling, and Culley's like, no, he's out of bounds, and they stopped the clock. Now, then eventually they reviewed it, but they stopped the clock right there. Like, he was on, and that's a great point, BK, that he was dialed in from the jump.
When the Jaguars were called for an illegal formation on their first offensive play, and then had to burn a timeout before their second snap, I knew the Texans were going to not only just win this game, but destroy this team. Because the team that was unprepared, the team that looked overwhelmed, the team that looks like the worst in football was the Jacksonville Jaguars, not even close to being the Houston Texans. We'll talk more about the Urban Meyer aspect of this game, but that guy looked like a dude that should be back in college. Like, I was waiting for Urban Meyer to, quote, retire again for health reasons at halftime. I mean, that's what I was waiting for. And that 20-point halftime deficit was the largest by an Urban Meyer coached team since the Gators trailed Alabama 24-3 on October 2nd, 2010. It's been a while since Urban Meyer got his rear end kicked the way the Texans kicked it yesterday. More coming up on this game, 713-780-3776. A bunch of you have already called in. We'll get your thoughts on the Texans win, and plus some good, bad, and ugly. We cover it all next. You're listening to the Wheelhouse right here on a Monday, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.